And thank you for joining me here. I'm Don Ma. What's been happening in the financial world recently? Well, everyone's been looking forward to NVIDIA's earnings report because it has really led the charge in the AI boom recently. And as well, the red-hot U.S. job market was not quite as blistering as originally reported in the year through March. This is after the Labor Department on Wednesday lowered its estimate of total payroll employment that month by 306,000 and of private employment by even more. And as well, the yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury note eased from near 16 highs after weak business activity data from the United States and the Eurozone. And home prices are rising. That comes on top of mortgage rates that have topped 7%. The National Association of Realtors says July's housing figures reversed a 5-month trend of falling home prices. The median existing home price was $406,000 last month. That's 1.9% higher from a year ago. And analysts say there are not many homes on the market, and that is driving up prices. Only 1 million homes are up for sale. That's a 14.6% drop from a year ago. And this is the lowest number of homes available for sale in July on record. And staying with the housing market, buying a home in the U.S. just keeps getting harder, it seems like, as mortgage rates are skyrocketing. And home prices remain at near record heights and supply is low. So what's behind this housing affordability crisis?
Mortgage rates in the United States have soared to their highest level in 21 years. According to data from Freddie Mac released Thursday, the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage averaged 7% this week. A year ago, it was just over 5%. The cause:
you have things like inflation remaining higher than ideal. You've got a lot of kind of concerns about what the Fed is going to do regarding future interest rate hikes.
Another issue facing potential home buyers and driving up prices: a lack of supply. Current homeowners are reluctant to sell, hunkering down with their ultra-low mortgage rates that might be half or less of current rates.
They can sit in that house for a while with a high price on the market until somebody comes along and buys.
For anyone looking to buy a home, waiting out the spike is not necessarily the best option.
You can end up spending even more just because you waited too long and rates rose instead of fall like you hoped.
Jacob Channel, a senior economist with LendingTree, suggests people focus on the things they can control.
We really don't have enough power to massively influence whether or not mortgage rates rise or fall on average. But we do have the power to boost things like our personal credit scores. We do have the power to save up more for a down payment. We do have the ability to shop around and compare loans from different mortgage lenders.
Meanwhile, FEMA's disaster fund is running out of money in a year that's already setting records for weather disasters. Now, here's the report.
We know that we have enough money to continue to support the ongoing life-saving efforts.
FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell says the agency's disaster fund is running out of money amid growing concern the funding could lapse if Congress doesn't pass a spending bill, a FEMA official told CNN.
As we do our analysis and we make our reports to Congress monthly, we take into account situations just like this so we can make sure that we always have enough funding.
However, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has indicated he expects Congress will approve more funding for FEMA.
We'll be authorizing in the same bill, in all likelihood, considerable increase for FEMA.
It comes as the agency pushes forward with the response to Maui's devastating wildfires in a year that's setting records for billion-dollar weather disasters before the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season has even arrived, and as hurricane and tropical storm activity is already causing damage. Tropical Depression Harold plowing through Texas after making landfall as a tropical storm Tuesday morning. The storm pummeling the state with high winds, heavy rain, flooding, and tornado warnings as it pushes towards Mexico.
Rank-and-file members of the Teamsters union ratified a 5-year deal with UPS. It puts an end to the threat of a crippling strike by 340,000 members. The union says just over 86% of members voted in favor of the 5-year contract. It will be in effect retroactive to August 1st. The deal was reached July 25th, which is a week before the union was set to go on strike. The ratification process took the 4 weeks since then. The Teamsters president called it the best contract in the history of UPS. And while we're avoiding a strike with UPS, the Hollywood Writers Union is urging members to continue picketing despite a new proposal from Hollywood studios and streaming services. The Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers negotiates on behalf of companies including Walt Disney and Netflix. It changed its offer to include a compounded 13% pay increase over the 3-year contract and curbs on AI-generated content. But the writers' union says the offer falls short and fails to protect writers from the threats that caused them to strike in the first place. And on the other side, the president of the Studio Alliance emphasized the offer made addresses the writers' main concerns. She says the studio is deeply committed to ending the strike. The Writers Guild of America began striking on May 2nd. They were later joined by members of the Screen Actors Guild. The strike has paused productions across Hollywood and is costing the California economy billions of dollars. And what about digital transactions only at KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut? Seems like others as well are planning on 100% digital sales. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has more.
Digital transactions only. Fast food chains like Taco Bell, KFC, and Pizza Hut are hoping to have 100% of their sales be digitally driven in the future.
We are advancing our digital strategy to one day achieve 100% of sales powered by digital.
Yum Brands CFO Chris Turner says this means more people will order online, on their phones, or at in-store kiosks. Yum is doing this largely because it thinks it'll make more money. When it made shifts toward digital in the past, order sizes grew, customers ordered more frequently, and there were more marketing opportunities.
When it comes to wanting to go to a 100% digital world, I see those restaurants wanting to do that. I understand the speed, the convenience, the security that's there, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
Payments expert Kevin Olson sees pros and cons to going full-on digital, both for restaurants and for the world. On the pro side, he says cash is expensive, dirty, and comes with security concerns. Digital is obviously more convenient. On the con side, many low-income people can only use cash. They'll be left out. And many Americans don't like digital only. Olson believes we won't see a 100% digital future in his lifetime, largely for this reason.
In the U.S., we've been fighting it. Businesses were saying, hey, we're going to go cashless. And the city governments and the local governments got involved and said, no, you can't do that. Until we get to the point to where as a society, we are 100% on board for going 100% digital, I don't see it happening.
Yum Brands hasn't specified a time frame for its all-digital goal. Turner believes the government is likely to step in if it gets too close. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And Google is getting roped into a lawsuit over its exclusive deal with the NFL to broadcast certain games. Football fans are seeking $6 million from the league and DirecTV. NFL Sunday Ticket subscribers say they were forced to pay more while being able to see fewer games on other platforms. That's because the NFL Sunday Ticket moved from DirecTV to Google's YouTube TV earlier this year. Google is believed to have information needed in the lawsuit. The subscribers want to see Google Sunday's Ticket subscriber numbers and pricing, but Google lawyers say the request is unduly burdensome. A filing says Google has agreed to provide 3 documents, but an attorney told Reuters that that's not nearly enough. And amid deadly wildfires, federal firefighters might take a significant pay cut. That's if congressional lawmakers can't agree on a spending budget. Here's the story.
Federal wildland firefighters are facing a huge potential pay cut this fall that's due to repeated disagreements over federal spending between lawmakers. The federal government employs almost 19,000 wildland firefighters. President Biden raised their pay to a minimum of $15 per hour in 2021. On top of that, he later implemented annual pay raises of $20,000 or 50% of their base pay, whichever was smaller. The White House now says the funding for those pay hikes are expected to run out in about 5 weeks. That's partly why the Biden administration sent this letter to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy earlier this month. In total, Biden asks for $40 billion in the letter. That's to support Ukraine, replenish U.S. federal disaster funds, and more. It also includes $60 million for firefighters, which would guarantee their pay. If funding for them runs out, some firefighters could go back to earning $15 an hour, as they did in 2021. Idaho Representative Mike Simpson said they might walk off the job with somebody who's going to cut their pay 50%. That could mean dire consequences for states in the West and Southwest, where over 16,000 firefighters were battling more than 90 large fires as of Tuesday. And just on Monday, Republicans from the House Freedom Caucus said they'll only support a spending bill if it includes money for a southern border wall, addresses weaponization of the federal government, doesn't allocate too much to Ukraine, and more. Lawmakers have until October to agree on a budget, which is when a new fiscal year starts.
And Netflix is giving some customers extra DVDs ahead of the rental service shutting down. The company says it will ship 10 extra movies to subscribers on September 29th. That's the final day of the company's legacy DVD by mail service. The DVDs are chosen by the company and partly based on the customer's queue of desired movies. Renters will still have to return the DVDs to Netflix by October 27th. Because of licensing agreements, Netflix can't give them away or sell them. It's unclear what the company plans to do with the extra discs, though. And FTX cryptocurrency exchange founder Sam Bankman-Fried is subsisting on bread and water because the federal jail where he's being held ahead of his fraud trial has not provided him with a vegan diet as he requested. This is according to his lawyers. Here's the report.
The founder of the defunct FTX cryptocurrency exchange is now, quote, subsisting on bread and water inside a Brooklyn federal jail. That's according to an attorney for Sam Bankman-Fried on Tuesday, who said his client had not been provided with a vegan diet as requested. The 31-year-old Bankman-Fried is being held in New York City's Metropolitan Detention Center. Attorney Mark Cohen told a judge at a hearing Tuesday that the lack of adequate food and medication at MDC was hampering Bankman-Fried's ability to prepare for trial on federal fraud charges. The former billionaire was led into court wearing leg restraints and a beige-colored uniform for his first appearance since his bail was revoked on August 11th after a judge decided the defendant violated the terms of his release by tampering with witnesses. Bankman-Fried on Tuesday pleaded not guilty to 7 criminal charges of fraud and conspiracy contained in a new indictment over the collapse of FTX last November. Prosecutors accuse him of stealing billions of dollars in FTX customer funds to plug losses at his hedge fund. Bankman-Fried has acknowledged inadequate risk management at FTX, but has denied stealing customer funds. At Tuesday's hearing, his lawyer said the jail's failure to provide him with the medication Adderall to treat attention deficit hyperactive disorder, despite a court order for the facility to do so, and serve him vegan food would hinder his ability to participate in preparing his defense case. In a statement, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which runs MDC, said inmates had access to, quote, appropriate health care, medicine, and, quote, nutritionally adequate meals, adding that it follows the requirements of a national menu that is, quote, analyzed yearly to ensure all dietary requirements are met.
So you know those puzzles you have to solve on certain websites to prove you're a human and not a bot? Where you have to click all the boxes that contain a crosswalk, a motorcycle, or a bus? Well, it turns out bots can solve them better than you can. Researchers at the University of California, Irvine recruited 1,400 people to solve 10 puzzles each on dozens of popular websites. They found that the bots were more accurate than humans in solving the puzzles called CAPTCHA tests, and were quicker as well. So according to the findings, bots solved distorted text CAPTCHA tests nearly 100% of the time. Humans only got them correct 50 to 84% of the time. It also took humans up to 15 seconds to solve the challenges. Bots could solve them in less than a second. For image-based puzzles, it took humans and bots nearly the same amount of time to solve, about 18 seconds. However, bots were still more accurate. Researchers say this calls into question whether these CAPTCHA tests are worth using given the frustration they cause human users, and whether they actually provide protection from hackers and bots. And just a quick update on China's property sector. China's once largest property developer by sales volume, Country Garden, its unfinished housing complexes and unpaid workers is further highlighting the worries within the debt crisis of the property sector. Here's the report.
At this unfinished residential complex in the outskirts of the northern Chinese metropolis of Tianjin, construction has slowed to a quiet crawl. It belongs to Country Garden, China's largest property developer by sales volume before this year. But now it's mired in a debt crisis that's threatening to spill over into the rest of the world's second largest economy.
This Country Garden project was stopped after we built the framework. We got a notice from management. They haven't paid us since the Spring Festival in January.
According to estimates from Japanese investment bank Nomura, Country Garden has nearly 1 million homes to complete. The developer has not publicly acknowledged that any of its projects have halted construction. But at two Tianjin projects Reuters visited on Friday, construction had partially or fully stopped, with workers complaining of months without pay.
We're very worried because since we arrived here in May, they've only given us living expenses of some $600 per person. We've not received a cent of other payments.
Once considered one of the more financially sound developers, Country Garden is now a bellwether of how the cycle has turned for developers. Its financial woes have added to the ongoing debt crisis in China's real estate sector, which accounts for roughly a quarter of the country's economy. And it's currently losing steam amid a housing slump and weak consumer spending. An investment manager at the Tianjin branch of Centerline Property Agency named Gao Fei told Reuters halted construction projects were relatively rare in the city, but confirmed there were projects that had slowed down development. According to Gao, China's real estate market rebounded slightly in the first quarter of 2023, but sales volumes since declined, with most city housing markets remaining in a depressed state.
We have seen that many homebuyers are affected by a lack of income, and their home buying choices and what they can afford have been impacted in turn.
A representative of one Country Garden project that Reuters filmed said its registered employees were all being paid, while another said its contractor had promised to pay the workers by the end of the month. The Housing Ministry did not comment on Reuters' queries about the property sector's halted builds or about Country Garden.
And the expansion of the Brics Group is a likely focus at a summit in South Africa this week. That's as the bloc looks to challenge the West for geopolitical dominance. Here's a preview.
Leaders of countries that account for more than a quarter of the global economy are set to meet in South Africa. Up for discussion at the Brics Summit, starting on August 22nd, how to turn this loose club of nations into a geopolitical force capable of challenging the West's dominance in global affairs. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The leaders of those countries will be in physical attendance, with one notable exception. That's Russian President Vladimir Putin, who faces an international arrest warrant over alleged war crimes in Ukraine, though he is expected to attend virtually. Few details have emerged about what BRICS leaders plan to discuss. However, expansion is expected to be high on the agenda. Some 40 nations have shown an interest in joining, either formally or informally, officials have said, including Saudi Arabia, Argentina and Egypt. However, there could be tensions. China wants to enlarge BRICS quickly as it tussles with the United States for geopolitical influence. Brazil is resisting, fearing the already unwieldy club could see its stature diluted. Russia is keen to bring in new members as it seeks friends amid its diplomatic isolation over Ukraine. Its most important African ally, South Africa, is on the same page. India is on the fence. What unites the bloc, though, is skepticism about a world order they see as serving the interests of the United States and its rich country allies. BRICS nations are keen to project themselves as alternative development partners to the West. The bloc's new development bank wants to de-dollarize finance and offer an alternative to the IMF and the World Bank. However, it's only approved $33 billion of loans in nearly a decade. That's about a third of the amount the World Bank committed to disbursing just last year. The NDB has also been hobbled by sanctions on Russia. South African officials say talk of a Brics currency, mooted by Brazil earlier this year as an alternative to dollar dependence, is off the table.
Institutional development of Brics.
Nevertheless, South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor has said Brics wants to show leadership, particularly in terms of the development and inclusion of the Global South in multilateral systems. The theme of the Johannesburg summit is Brics and Africa. That emphasises how the bloc can build ties on a continent increasingly becoming a theatre for competition between world powers. Officials in Brazil, China and South Africa said climate change may come up at the summit, but indicated it wouldn't be a priority.
And staying with Brics, Brazil's president called on Wednesday for the Brics nation to create a common currency for trade and investment between each other. So then what are the challenges of setting up a Brics currency? Well, according to the South African Central Bank governor, he says if you want to have it, you're going to need a banking union. You'll have to have a fiscal union. You need to get a macroeconomic convergence. Plus, they're going to need a common central bank. And the question is, where is that common central bank going to be located? Right now, the dollar still dominates global trade. It is on one side of almost 90% of global forex transactions, according to Bank of International Settlements data. And moving on, in California, less than 2 weeks after state regulators voted to allow driverless taxis, incidents involving autonomous or self-driving vehicles have already spiked, and some officials think more testing and regulation is needed. Here's more.
There's like 10 of them. Traffic chaos on the streets of San Francisco, caused by cars with no one in the driver's seat.
There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 cruise cars blocking. No one can get through.
These driverless cabs stalled for half an hour outside of the Outside Lands Music Festival. In the last 2 weeks, incidents involving autonomous vehicles have spiked after a regulatory agency approved GM's Cruise and Google's Waymo to expand their driverless car services in San Francisco.
Hello? We can't hear you. Can you turn up the volume?
I mean, I couldn't have predicted it any better. I don't think any of us could.
San Francisco city leaders, including Fire Chief Janine Nicholson, were outspoken about safety concerns, requesting more testing and regulations for the innovative but potentially dangerous technology. Just days after California's Public Utility Commission voted to allow Cruise and Waymo to roll out more cars in the city at expanded times, a cruise car and a fire truck collided. Now the state's DMV is investigating, and Cruise has been ordered to reduce its fleet by half until further notice.
It could cost someone their life. When an autonomous vehicle impacts one of our company's ability to respond to an emergency incident, it can impact someone's survivability.
Data from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration shows driverless cars have only resulted in minor injuries. But city officials say that paints an incomplete picture because that data only shows crashes, not delays or chaos caused by stalled cars.
Doesn't know what to do. He's about to go drive into this trench right here.
This cruise car drove into downed power lines.
The data that we're getting is from 911 calls, which have tripled as a result of autonomous vehicles doing crazy things.
Everyone's getting off the bus because there's no one driving the car.
Cruise's Prashanthi Raman says its mission is to work with cities and make their streets safer.
The status quo of transportation is really unacceptable. There's over 40,000 fatalities happening on the roads in the United States. We've driven over 3 million driverless miles, and we have had no life-threatening injuries or fatalities.
This experience may feel futuristic, but the need to buckle up is the same as always.
Waymo declined an interview with CNN, but said it's proud of its safety record and its automated driver demonstrates comparable or better performance than a reference model of a human driver. AVs aren't just in San Francisco. Cruise is already operating in Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles, too. Chief Nicholson has a warning for other cities.
Pay attention, get on board, get ahead of this, because it's coming your way. And I don't want them to have happen to them what has happened here.
And finally, it seems like BlackRock is dramatically lowering support for environmental and social proposals from shareholders over the past year. So let me just give you some numbers to put things into perspective. The company only supported 7% of shareholder proposals on environmental and social issues. This is 3 times lower the support compared to the previous year, and a whopping 7 times lower compared to 2021. Now, in 2021, BlackRock supported nearly half of environmental and social proposals. So it's a dramatic change compared to just a couple of years ago. And that's all the stories we have for you today. Thanks for joining me. I'm Don Ma.